Good morning, everyone. So what I would like to do today is just to give you some insight about our journey with RSD and how we started with and where it's moving to. So the way I will start about this is talking about what's engineering and the reason why RSD seems to be very natural to an engineering discipline and might be with lots of other disciplines that in engineering you've got certain attributes that you have to look at. So if I look at certain aspect of an engineer or attributes for an engineer, you could see that an engineer needs to have some good foundation in science and engineering, or might be foundation in sciences, competency, ability to communicate, the ability to define and formulate a problem, and the ability to solve these problems, ability to develop over a long period of time. And if you try to put all of these attributes together, that's what defines an engineer. So if we're trying to graduate an engineer or try to build or to have a quality engineers, you could see that we need to have a number of attributes that we need to deliver to these or build these engineers. So some of these is about the problem solving, the research skills, staff commitment, curriculum design, how we build our curriculum, how we develop their communication skills, how we make the assessment relevant to their work environment later on, how we can help them develop this flexible learning. Adding to all of these things, now if we look at the engineering discipline, you could see lots of drives that are affecting that engineering. These drives might be about the industry itself, the new breeds of graduates that we need. It might be sometimes it's the employment landscape. You might have some new education strategies that you have to be content with. You might have also some university-based, like what we've got in our university, beacon of environment that enforces certain or trying to highlight certain aspects of education strategies that we have used. So if you took all of that on board with the previous attribute, you could see that it's very important when we trying to build engineers that we need to explicitly help them to understand what we mean by problem solving. How can we effectively communicate these skills? How can we explicitly develop these skills? How we could build a curriculum that would help them with these skills. So I will start very briefly, just simply saying that in 2006 we started, went to join, and we had a really big issue with some of our master students. Then in 2007 we started using that in the first cohort of assessment for Master by Defense. Then in 2009, we had an adaptation by the school, and we started using it as part of the honor assessment. And it became in 2010, it's very common to all the school. And so far now, it went all the way that it's now becoming as part of our curriculum, our program. So if you look at an example of how we were using RSD for honor assessment, one of the unique things that we've done as part of that, we tried to link the mark descriptors as part of the autonomy. So if you look at the top, like what Kathy just was showing, at the horizontal axis, it was the autonomy. And what we've done here, we tried to link the autonomy to the mark descriptors as pass, credit, and so forth. In the master students, I tried to do a different type of assessment where trying even within each, if you like, at autonomy level, try to give that a mark and try to use that as a way of having a more fine adjustment of the mark and try to justify my mark based on what I see the students and how they met these requirements. And the nice interesting thing about this, we tried it with a number of other students, other staff members, and we were able to come up with roughly the same mark within 1 or 2%. Some interesting responses from feedback from students who finished the program, went to industry, and some of these statements were they found that RSD, when they asked about the relevance of RSD, they said it's very relevant. My work involved the research. I think they are fairly relevant, that they have broad spectrum and to do with facets, and all of these seems to be a very important aspect. So what I would like to mention that these are some of the issues associated with what we come across. When you do trying to embody RSD, you need to look at the significant investment that you have to put, especially with your core staff. There is also some effort to go with the transition, and also there are certain aspects that can arise in terms of training and helping staff. Okay. Thank you.
Well, Susan and Haley are coming up to get ready. You might have some questions for Saeed.
Yeah, but the quickest I was able to speak. So. Yes.
I'm particularly interested in your last comment that there were issues to do with training staff, and I'm interested in training of the tutors as well. What were those issues?
Actually, tutors were not the problem. Actually, the professors were the problem. Sorry to say this. I think usually when people got used to a certain aspect or a certain assessment, they don't see a reason for moving from one type of assessment to another. Like, just to give you an example, once I was taking one of these rubrics to mark one of the honors, and one of my colleagues is an associate professor, and he looked at it and said, this is going to take me more time to read, more than the time it's going to be for the presentation. So we said, okay, we'll just leave it aside for the time being. Then after the seminar, we'll look at it and we'll mark it. He liked it after, but at the time, he thought it's too confronting. Okay.
One final question for Saeed.
I'm interested in how you communicate to students your use of the RSD and how they responded to it, if at all.
Actually, I have to say, John done a great job. Before we start the semester, on the whole week, we invite all the students, especially all the honor students. We give them a presentation and we tell them this is what's going to be happening, why we're doing it, what's the rationale behind it. If you don't do that, I think students might react differently. So ideally, you try to tell them what's coming and prepare them, and they liked it. And the surprising thing, with all of the assessment component we had, that piece of rubric, initially we thought of as an assessment, it became the topic of discussion. So each student was coming to after the assessment or after their presentation or to come with that rubric and says, okay, how did I perform? Why do you think I didn't do this? And it was good also for the supervisor to tell them, this is why you were missing on this part. So it was a very good discussion point rather than just saying, oh, you had a good presentation. The presentation was not that good. So it was more explicit in trying to tell them if they've done really well or if they haven't done well, why they haven't done well.
Thanks, Saeed. Another round of applause.